The following program contains scenes and language of a frank and explicit nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to Filmjitsu, the podcast that wields films like deadly weapons. We are your hosts. I am Mike.
And I am Jay.
On this week's episode of Filmjitsu, Jason had to watch the fourth installment in the Crow franchise, the direct-to-video sequel, The Crow, Wicked Prayer.
Wicked.
Wicked fucking pissa.
Every time you're going to...
I know. We're also going to do our bottom 5 direct-to-video titles, play another rousing round of Dueling Double Bills before Jason tells me what film I have to watch as payback for this most wicked of all prayers. But before all that, let's go ahead and roll the trailer for the 2005 film, The Crow, Wicked Prayer.
I feel like the trailer is just going to be the sound of one long, juicy fart.
We misjudged you for an engine-loving, heartless convict. You sure got a lot of life in you. What I got in me ain't life.
We are told that when someone dies, the crow carries their soul to the land of the dead. Then sometimes, the crow can bring that soul back to put the wrong things right.
Didn't we kill that guy?
I'm afraid of what I've become. You tell them they should be too.
Jason, there are so many reasons why I gave you The Crow, Wicked Prayer for this week's episode. The cast is horrendous. The fact that there are 4 of these movies was just sort of mind-blowing to me. And of course, the cherry on top of all of it, your beloved Edward Furlong as the Crow. Honestly, I think what prompted this more than anything is just the cover art for this film. It's like floating heads and Edward Furlong looking all goth and sad. It's so ridiculous.
It is.
And so I thought, clearly, Jason cannot finish his life without having seen this particular movie, starring Edward Furlong, Tara Reid, and that guy from Bones.
David Boreanaz.
I'm glad somebody knows. I don't know. And people know this guy, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
He's pretty
know who
famous.
He is. Yeah, he is.
I'm unacquainted, but I'm also unacquainted with The Crow, Wicked Prayer. I want you to know that I started to try to watch this.
No.
And
why?
I think I watched about 10 minutes of the wrong Crow sequel on YouTube before I was like, this doesn't seem like a Wicked Prayer at all. And I bailed. So I still don't know anything about this movie. I'm assuming you know everything about this movie. Tell me your experience with your favorite Hollywood actor, Edward Furlong, as the Crow.
This is just some next level weird ass fuckery. It's all so deeply bizarre that I actually had the needling suspicion that this was like the Hellraiser movies. It was a Dimension Films tax write-off that allowed them to also hold on to the rights for the Crow film series until it inevitably would come back into vogue like it did. Right?
Sure.
And then they could make some real money with the property because it's like the Crow was sort of crammed into an entirely different and very strange film that wanted to be about several other things that had nothing to do with the Crow. So on one end, you've got the ugly economic realities of modern Native American cultures living in the desert states.
That was not on my bingo card for a Wicked Prayer.
That would not have been on anyone's bingo card. But for some reason, the neo-noir Crow, almost neon gun fable, I might add, has moved to the southern desert in the United States and for some reason is focused on the need of a Native American community having to choose between jobs in a waning mining industry And of course, the building of a new casino. So that's one piece of what this movie's about.
Quick, get me the crow. Like, what?
Yeah, right. When do we bring that in? Well, not yet. Because next we're going to talk about how cults can spring up from such a situation as this. In this case, it's a wild Satanist cult with a leader named Luke Crash. Luke, L-U-C. Get it?
Yeah.
Lucifer. Right.
Yeah. Wow.
So he, along with his girlfriend, Lola Byrne, get it? So his name is Luke Crash. She's Lola Byrne, Crash and Burn.
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. The full deck we're playing with here is just remarkable. Anyhow, they're looking to become immortal by bringing about the Antichrist through ritual murder.
Okay. All
Or
right.
something. I'm actually not sure. It was also very weird because Luke is also known as Death, and his three homies are Pestilence, War, and Famine.
So he's got like a gang made up of the
Yes.
four horsemen?
They're the four horsemen of the apocalypse who drive cars that are painted for each of their personas.
That's an incredible commitment to a bit. Like, it is one thing to be like, I got kind of a nickname that people call me when I'm out doing like Satan crime, but to have an auto body shop involved in the theme that's something.
That is something. I mean, Vanity Plate is where I'd draw the line anyway.
Yeah, right. That's about as far as one should go.
Finally, the piece of the puzzle here is a Romeo and Juliet story about a girl named Lily of native descent. Her last name is Ignites the Dawn.
Oh.
And her boyfriend, a Latino ex-con that did time for the noble crime of killing a rapist. He's your lead, a guy named Jimmy Cuervo. Yes, Cuervo, which is Spanish for crow. And he's played by Eddie Furlong, who, if you're wondering, doesn't even in the slightest look in any way as if he could be of Latin descent.
Right. That's why I didn't know who you were talking about. I was like, when do we get to Eddie Furlong?
Yeah, right. Is he even in this movie? No, he's Jimmy Cuervo. He is the Latin Romeo of this.
I love how matter of fact you were. No, he's Jimmy Cuervo. It's like, holy shit, did you guys hear? That's Jimmy Cuervo.
There he is. It's Jimmy Cuervo. This is like, it's not Romeo and Juliet. It's West Side Story, but it's the 1960s West Side Story, right?
Uh-huh.
Because all the white people are playing other ethnicities.
Right.
Let's just put it this way. I'm Lithuanian and Scottish, and I look more like a Latino than he does. Ultimately, what the movie tries to do is take all of that and then also be a typical Crow movie, which is like a violent murder fantasy that essentially has the following pieces to it, right? Lovers are murdered in a particularly brutal fashion. That's your first main thing, right? In this case, Crash and Burn. I'm never going to get sick of it. They hang Jimmy and Lily, then cut out Jimmy's heart and Lily's eyes.
Oh, okay.
They next have to do something even more crazy. They have to get hitched before El Nino, who is some kind of satanic priest who's played by, I shit you not, Dennis Hopper.
I cannot believe that's real. I had to look this up 3 different times to make sure I wasn't misreading it. It's like, is this Dennis Hopper? Is it Dennis with like
Is
one
it
N?
Denny?
What's the catch here? Yeah, Denny Hopper.
Hopper.
No, the Dennis Hopper.
He's a major character in the middle of some pretty important scenes, but it couldn't have taken him more than a couple days of work. So I don't think we need to cry ourselves a river over Dennis Hopper's involvement here.
Sure.
He probably didn't get paid much, but he also probably didn't give a shit because he didn't really do much in the way of effort. Everything he talked about, he was in a gangsta mode.
Oh, no.
So, it just sounded ridiculous. Everything that was coming out of his mouth sounded like it was stuff that was read off a script that he couldn't quite have any real conviction behind. He just had that manufactured Dennis Hopper crazy.
Right.
And
just
that was
being
really
Dennis
what it
Hopper was enough.
Yeah, which was fine because it was more energy than anything that was really in the rest of the movie.
Like a phoning it in Dennis Hopper still has to be light years better than Edward Furlong in Halloween makeup.
I don't know what the fuck was happening here, honestly. Next, to be a crow movie, of course, you have to have a mystical crow that resurrects the man, Which, by the way, I thought would be really interesting as an offshoot of the Crow is why not at some point resurrect the woman instead?
Right.
And have a female Crow?
Yeah.
That would be kind of neat, just saying. Anyway, it imbues him with super strength and nimbleness while also, of course, costuming him in leather, white face paint, and heavy black eyeliner.
Right. So does he apply this, or is this like it just comes with the magic?
Allegedly, he was putting on a costume that he wore the previous Halloween or something. So,
okay. It's Forever Halloween. Okay.
That should be the name of one of those stores that takes over like the empty JCPenney's. Forever Halloween. He then broods and he looks emo for a while before, of course, exacting his revenge. And that brings us to our third main point to be a Crow movie. All the bad guys must have terribly idiotic villain names. Now, I've already talked about the new ones. You know, they're all named for the Four Horsemen.
Right.
In the first movie, it was Top Dollar and T-Bird and Skank. You know, and it was okay because you had terrific, memorable character actors like Michael Wincott.
Yeah.
Who may have the greatest voice ever.
Yep.
Maybe.
Fair. Yes.
And David Patrick Kelly, who, you know, warriors come out and play.
Course.
Right? Like these are cool character actors. But in this movie, you've got Yuji Okamoto, who my white boy ass 100% thought was Ken Leung from Lost.
Oh, no.
And I'll just, that's on me.
Right.
And Tito Ortiz, the ex-MMA fighter. So that's who you've got instead of Michael Wincott and, you know, David Patrick Kelly.
Right. So when I told you in our last episode that Tito Ortiz was in this movie, that didn't mean anything to you.
No.
It did mean something to me. And what it meant was I knew you were about to see some extremely bad acting.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everyone in this can't act. There's not a single role in this movie, Mike, that's appropriately cast. None of it.
That's almost impressive.
I know, right? It's almost like you intended to do it, like it was some sort of subversion. But it's not even interesting enough to have been subversive in that way. This thing is supposed to be violent noir, hinging on bad guys getting theirs in smoky gang hangouts and rain-slick streets. But there's no rain in the desert. There's no smoky gang hangouts in the Southwest. So what we get is a bar that looks like a soundstage and a church that looks like a soundstage.
It's just the same soundstage. They just rolled a bar into the church and that's it.
Yep. And there's no fun. There's not even a little bit of fun. The energy here is flat. And oh my God, Mike, this is so fucking dull. Like pure insomnia dull. It's like attending this giant religious wedding between two people that you know aren't going to last more than a couple years. It's an endurance test of religious mumbo jumbo and quasi-concerned white guilt for the plight of non-white people living in southern border towns. That's all this is.
How is it that it has so much on its mind and simultaneously nothing on its mind?
It doesn't make any sense.
Well, something you said at the beginning was interesting to me. You talked about suspecting that maybe even this was just a way of maintaining the rights to these characters for future endeavors, which there may have been something to that. That is a thing that happens. We've talked about it before with the Hellraiser franchise, like really very plain spoken. They have said, we just crammed Cenobites into other movies to call it Hellraiser. Right. So maybe that was what's going on here.
But unfortunately, it isn't, because this was actually based on a book that is called The Crow Wicked Prayer. And it does share the DNA of the book in some respect, although it seems like it's the reverse cramming that happened. And all of this Southern angst is all thrust into that story from the book, which is, of course, based on J.O. Barr's original Crow stories. It's almost like fan fiction, this other Crow thing.
Yeah.
I think that J.O. Barr allowed it to be part of his universe or whatever, and people seem to like the book well enough, but this is, I think, tangentially related. Like there, it was the character of like the Bonnie and Clyde Satanist types that want to become immortal,
Right.
but then they kill people and then they come back and get vengeance visited upon them, right?
Hmm.
It didn't have the whole other aspect of the thing that this has, where there's this Romeo and Juliet aspect. There's or West Side Story, as we've decided it's more like, or the pestilence and war and Four Horsemen thing. It's less convoluted. It's more of a straightforward story originally.
Yeah.
So it's funny. It really was a Crow story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then became something way more convoluted because I assume of the director, Lance Mungia, who really is only known for one other film, which was an indie favorite called Six String Samurai.
Yeah.
From, I think it was 1998.
A pretty cool flick. It's kind of a samurai El Mariachi.
It is. It's more batshit. It's more crazy. It's more wild. It's really fantastical.
Yeah,
and off the cuff. And Elvis is a king, and all this wild
That's
shit.
right.
Right. Yeah. It takes place in Las Vegas. Right.
Right.
Like it is a batshit, but it's got high energy, just like El Mariachi. Right. It's got that high energy, that indie action vibe.
Mm-hmm.
This movie has none of that. Something happened to Lance Mungia from then till this. And I think it was just the death of his passion. Like, he just seems horrifically disinterested in filmmaking. It's as if I made a movie now.
Yeah.
Not that I was ever really as good as he was when he made Six String Samurai.
Yeah.
But if I made a movie now, it would probably be The Crow Wicked Prayer.
Oh, what would your Crow movie be? Like,
it would be The Lady. I think I would make it The Lady. You know,
Lady
I would
Crow?
pull a Ghostbusters and get the entire anti-woke community all pissed off at me.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
supposed to be a dude.
yeah,
But
fuck
anyway,
those crybabies. I actually like it better as The Crow, Lady Crow. That's pretty good, actually.
Or just The Lady Crow. No,
The Lady-
no colon.
The
Lady
Lady
Crow.
Crow.
And it's set in the medieval ages, right? It's the first incarnation of the Crow was a lady. It's actually
okay.
Joan of Arc, if we're
Right.
really talking about
Oh.
it. Anyway, so let's get back to The Crow Wicked Prayer, because this is really why we're here, right? So all of a sudden, I'm just going to go full New England because of the word wicked. Every time it comes up, I lose myself.
These bunch of fucking chowder heads.
So anyway, there's the fight scenes in this movie, and we really need to talk about this, because when I used to make these no-budget flicks that I used to make with my friends or whatever, we'd be wise to not have too much action in our flicks, because we'd look dumb
Right.
doing stunts. We'd look dumb fighting. And when we did do it, we would shoot it from all these different angles so that we could cut it together to make it look more compelling, almost like Raging Bull style, right?
Right, yeah.
Like that kind of thing. Not nearly as good, mind you. I'm not saying that we did it.
Yeah, I think we followed. Yeah, nobody was worried about you making that claim.
Well, hear how they covered that, because no one knew how to fight. The director decided to shoot everything in slow motion.
Oh, no.
Instead of bad fight choreography happening in real time, you get bad fight choreography happening in slow-mo.
Oh, boy. Nowhere to hide.
It's awful. Mike, it's so bad. But the real question here, and I know the thing that you most care about, is, hey, how was Eddie Furlong? Because I haven't talked really anything about him. And you know what? I didn't want to hate Eddie in this. I went in with the hope that this might be a surprise and that he'd be good. Because honestly, Mike, I feel bad for this guy.
Yeah.
Say what I will about how horribly miscast he was as the young savior of humankind in T2. I know the guy did have a promising career once.
Yeah.
And this seemed like an attempt to get back on the right side of things after a few years of kind of wandering in the wilds, screwing up the way young actors often do. But Mike, this is a train wreck. And while I'd argue it isn't entirely his fault in that he is kind of trying his best, what do you do when you're Eddie Furlong and you're forced to wear white pancake makeup and ridiculous eyeliner while saying lines like,
I'm the fairy fucking godfather that's gonna save your fairy fucking tales.
So raspy and irreverent. So not giving a shit. Oh, man.
At the end of the day, you got to step back and look at the legacy of this film, which is that it basically buried the franchise for 20 years.
Yeah.
The rebooted Crow, I think, came out in 2024. So that's just about 20 years later. And while there was a Crow TV attempt that happened somewhere in there. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
It didn't really sink its teeth into anyone.
Well, I think one of the things, of course, that was interesting to me about this is that it was a direct to video film. We haven't really talked much about that phenomenon on the show. And now in this age of streaming, it's a little less clear what is sort of direct to streaming. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But once upon a time, a direct to video release was a real blemish on a film.
And then when COVID hit, everything got confused because nobody could go to the cinemas. So they started putting everything out to the streamers, right? But I think we've sort of gone back to expecting one level of quality at the cinema and one level of quality at the streaming level. And certain stars are who they are. Certain streamers are who they are. If it's a to-be original, I think we know what we're going to get out of it, right?
Right.
You have a sense of how good something's going to be if it premieres on anything other than Disney, Amazon, Netflix.
There was a time where in the world of physical media, it wasn't murky. If it didn't go in the theater and it just hit direct to video stores, that was a pretty big blemish on a film.
And The Crow Wicked Prayer is a complete, perfect, fossilized specimen of what it was to be direct to video.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Mike, did you know that The Crow Wicked Prayer is technically not a direct-to-video release?
I did, and I ran across this a little bit. Like some of these movies were in 2 theaters for 9 minutes.
It had a very, very limited theatrical run back in June of 2025. And I only mention this not because I'm trying to quibble with the rationale for the bottom 5, because, hell, I'm the one who decided that Vanilla Ice qualified as a musician for our last episode.
I did mark that list, so fair.
I just wanted to point it out because I kept running into these bullshit limited releases with movies that I was trying to put on my list.
Yeah.
And it made the bottom 5 very, very challenging.
Did you leave them out? Because I didn't sweat it too much. If they had those like really like basic bitch 5 minutes so that caterer's mom could come and see the movie in the theater, I didn't worry too much about it.
Exactly. The other problem with this bottom 5 for me was that bottom 5 franchises ate up a lot of my picks for DTV, as did our bottom 5 fourth installments.
Right.
So basically, I was struggling huge with this one.
Okay.
Because I don't watch a lot of this shit. And it seems like the only things I could choose from were crappy Disney sequels to big-name films from the 90s and softcore thrillers. And that, my friend, does not an interesting list make. So I want to know how you fared.
I did give you the out in our last episode that it wasn't real. You didn't have to have seen the movie. As a matter of fact, I am pretty certain that I have not seen a single one of the films on my list.
I went completely the opposite way because I thought that was such a cop-out.
I like to have fun with these and see how ridiculous they get. I was hanging out with a buddy of ours who instantly, when I told him about this list, he was like, oh, there's like 1,000 Land Before Time movies, which seemed like a weird thing for a grown man to know instantly, but he did, and I was impressed. So I didn't have to see the film, and I certainly didn't see my number 5, which is Tales from the Crapper. A parody of Tales from the Crypt Wikipedia explains that this is a Trauma Entertainment co-founder,
Oh, yeah.
B-movie director-producer Lloyd Kaufman as the Crap Keeper. He presents viewers with 2 horror stories that contain gore, nudity, fat men, talking penises, lesbian scenes, vampires, UFOs, and appearances by porn star Ron Jeremy and the band Newfound Glory. I'm not sure which one of those things is worse. The film was purportedly shot over 3 years with 6 directors and close to 15 writers.
Wow.
My question is, how? How is it possible that it required 15 writers to get this thing across the finish line? Because I'll be honest, it seems like you could accomplish that exact same thing with a bottle of Jose Cuervo, a head injury, and ChatGPT. It's 2 stories and it's trauma, so you know it's not crime and punishment. Also, I'm a little hurt that Wikipedia lumps fat men in with talking penises and UFOs. That's not nice. What did I do to them? But what I do know is that Tales from the Crapper is my number 5.
Lloyd Kaufman.
Yeah.
That's all you had to say.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised it's at number 5. I mean, when his name comes into the equation, you pretty much right away.
I think that's why it's my number 5. It's like, of course, of course, Uncle Lloyd's got one, right? He's probably got a million.
Weirder from there.
Tales from the Crapper is not especially creative, and then for it to have taken 6 years and 15 writers, are you shitting me?
It doesn't surprise me. I've met Lloyd a couple times at different festivals.
Yeah,
and he's chaos, and it doesn't surprise me. Let's just say, you know. Well, unlike you, I've seen all my movies. But
That's
what
crazy.
I did is I ended up looking at my Letterboxd.
Okay.
Ordering it by the worst rating, and then finding the movies that I thought were interesting to talk about. So anyway, my number 5 is Velvet Buzzsaw from 2019. Yeah, right. This really was a case of unmet expectations. You got Jake Gyllenhaal, John Malkovich, and Rene Russo in a satirical comedy horror film about the art world. I mean, sign me up, right? I like Gyllenhaal in almost everything I see him in. He's got that quirky leading man thing down pat, and he's oddball enough to always seem unpredictable. And that should work great in a film where he plays an eccentric art critic named Morph, who starts hallucinating that paintings by a mysterious artist are coming to life, but there's just something horribly amiss in the overall tone of in the pacing of this film.
This is a Dan Gilroy film, isn't it?
It
like
is
he made this
Dan
like
Gilroy
almost like
film.
right after Nightcrawler.
But watching this film doesn't feel at all as clever as anything that Nightcrawler would have set up.
Right.
And instead, this is just boring and unfunny characters being violently massacred in deeply weird but banal ways. And that really is why Velvet Buzzsaw ends up as number 5 on my list.
Some amazing unintended connections. Are you ready for this?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Dan Gilroy has only directed a few films. He's written more.
Yeah.
Did you know that Dan Gilroy wrote Free Jack? A movie you mentioned on our last episode because of Mick Jagger, right? In our bottom 5 musicians. Amazingly, also in that film, Emilio Estevez as the lead.
Yeah.
The name of that character is Alex Furlong.
Oh my God, there's so much happening right now.
You're getting Velvet Buzzsaw like right now in real life.
As I research these, I'm starting to think
there's a disgust for the world of money.
We spent decades in a psychiatric hospital for the criminally insane.
There is some sort of power. Some spirit. It's connected to his art.
I've sold out and art is coming to kill me. Mike, I blame you.
Well, my number 4, sir, if we're going to be taking blame, it is my fault for having seen the original film. So I didn't see this one, but I did see the first one. Okay. It's terrible, trust me. But my number 4, is the sequel to a Steven Seagal film that doesn't actually have the kimono in chief in the movie.
What?
And when making this sequel, they somehow managed to downgrade from Steven Seagal to professional wrestler Bill Goldberg, and from rapper DMX to some guy named Corrupt, spelled with a K, who I believe has a record with Death Row Records, so I'm not going to make fun of that guy so that nobody throws me off a balcony. But my pick is the direct-to-video sequel to the film Half Past Dead. It is Half Past Dead 2.
Does that make it full dead?
Yes, Jason, that's my whole fucking point. Half Past Dead 2 is just all the way dead. If you go half past twice, that's all the way. Now you're just extra dead. The title of this movie, in fact, should just be Extra Dead, which, if I'm being honest, is a better title than Half Past Dead 2. And Extra Dead is also what I would rather be than having to watch Half Past Dead 2. Another one of these, it didn't make my list, but it was close, is Best of the Best 4 Without Warning.
Yeah.
I was like, my dude, you had 3 other movies worth of warning.
There was all the warning.
That is a franchise full of machine guns and karate tournaments. What do you mean you didn't see it coming 4 movies in? Are you kidding me?
My number 4 is Dracula 3D, which is actually Argento's Dracula. Now, this was shown in theaters for 1 week, and it grossed $4,500.
Okay.
It was a surprise to me one night when I was perusing horror titles on like Freevee or whatever it was. And I was all excited because it was a fairly recent Argento. And to be quite honest, I had lost the thread on the guy after maybe the mid 90s or so.
Right.
So I was intrigued. And then, wow, what a turd. On top of the fact that the movie is just artless and awful in a community theater kind of way, from the public access way that it was shot, to the really stilted acting, to the horrendous lighting, everything about this film felt cheap. But what's more, he once again has his daughter, Asia Argento, all kinds of naked once again. And I have to say, it remains as weird as it was when she was 19 and he did it the first time with the Stendhal syndrome.
Yeah.
Because even though she is a delight to see without clothing.
Yeah, it's a very complicated thing because it is not a bad time, but when you know what's going on, you're like, this is twisted.
Exactly right. Yes.
And maybe this is just us being not very European. I don't know. Maybe this is just like our Puritan wicked prayer bullshit. We're having a hard time with this. Maybe we just need to like lighten up a little bit, but it's weird, right? It is weird.
I don't know, man. And naked daughters being directed by their dads aside, this was Argento's first digital production. And it's budgeted at $7.7 million. Now, I have to tell you, dude, you're seeing about 1% at most of the budget on the screen. The CGI gore looks like it came out of a Commodore 64. If Coppola's Dracula was a celebration of the history of cinema, Argento's is a lament about how video killed the movie star.
Wow.
The Count is always very attentive to his guests.
Girls of her age have a tendency to be a bit too forward.
The creature is not human. It is a vampire. They sometimes transform their victims. It gives them extreme power.
I have seen so many Argento films over the years, kind of all over the place, like not necessarily in any kind of logical order, but this is one of the few that I haven't caught up with. It's so good for you. It's still on the list.
You might have to. Yeah.
Well, October is on the calendar, isn't it? My number 3 is a title, get ready for this, called Shucks Shabalala's Survival Guide to South Africa. First off, the guy who plays Shucks Shabalala, his real name is Leon Schuster. So what the fuck? But
okay.
So it's about Shucks and Shorty are producing a survival guide to South Africa for tourists visiting the country for the 2010 FIFA World Cup, which immediately sounds like some kind of weird Mad Libs situation. They take a group of tourists from Germany, Ireland, Greece, China, France, India, and the Netherlands and show them what life is like in South Africa. Only the South Africa they see is one created entirely by Shucks, Shabalaba, or whatever his name is, and Shorty. There is perhaps no Venn diagram of shit I am less interested in than this movie, right? A direct-to-video soccer comedy about a fake travel guide for hapless FIFA enthusiasts. I would just assume gargle toilet water. Can you imagine, Jason, what a menagerie of idiotic cultural stereotypes this whole thing must be? Wow. Shucks Shabalala's Survival Guide to South Africa.
It just seems to me like it's one of those gods must be crazy kind of things that would have caught on and people would have been like, oh, this is charming. Look how eccentric the Africans are. All the white people like sitting in their houses being all, comfortably white and watching the black people do comedy for them. So that's kind of the way it sounds to me. But
that Queen Victoria, she gave us, I got a letter to prove it is ours. It is our land. It is our land. It is rightfully ours.
And then white people around it, do you think they would like you to they would like to see this thing?
Well, we are not disturbing the white people. Why would they disturb us?
If you find an image from this movie, it is clear that this was made with bus money. Like just handfuls of dollars that would fit in your jeans pockets and not a penny more.
Well, on that note, my number 3 definitely has that kind of vibe as well. It takes a little explanation before we get too deep into it. Back in the days of video stores, Mike, there were dozens of movies you'd never heard of with fantastic, thrilling, wild, and it's like often enticing video covers.
Cover art, it's such a lost thing.
I have a whole ass coffee table book I own called VHS Cover Art. It's by a guy named Thomas Hodge, and it's beautiful.
What was your favorite? Just real quick, what were your favorites?
Off the top of my head, I'm not even sure.
I got 3. Fright Night.
Fright Night's great.
The Evil Dead.
Yeah, that was good.
And Night of the Demons. With Angela.
Night of the Demons is awesome.
Yeah, those are 3 cover. Those really jumped out at me.
Anyhow, we'd scan the shelves and we'd look at titles like Blood Sisters and Slaughterhouse and Neon Maniacs, and inevitably
Gator Bait.
One of their awesome, evocative, colorful, and sort of raunchy covers would get its hooks into you.
Yeah.
And you'd rent it, you'd go home, you'd get the popcorn popped, you'd lower the lighting, and then feed the tape into the VCR, only to be greeted with some horrendously terrible trash that made you seriously consider going back to the video store and putting up enough of a stink to get your $1.50 back. Honestly, a great bottom 5 would be something like bad movies with great cover art.
Oh, sure. Yes. Slumber Party Massacre.
Oh, that's such a good one. That's a great, that probably would have been one of my favorite ones, honestly. Now we're in the age of streaming. And somehow the same goddamn tricks are working. Because enter Bitten, a 2008 vampire movie starring Jason Mewes as a charisma-less chud whose new girl just happens to be a bloodsucker. I cannot remember much about this flick, except that star Erica Cox looked quite terrific. A fact that didn't help matters one iota since she kept being given dialogue to deliver. So, of course, the cover of the film is a really striking image of her with her fangs bared. And any red-blooded dude who likes the ladies would want to, see more of it.
Right. Yeah. Jason Mewes is really your sign here, isn't it?
Well, I think that the fact that this thing was directed by this guy named Harvey Glazer, who directed Van Wilder freshman year.
Oh,
after this movie.
Oh, boy.
Before it was kicking it old school with school spelled with a K. Then there's Bitten in between. I mean, had I known that, I probably wouldn't have watched it.
Right.
But it's a horror movie with no horror thrills to offer, despite a cover that promised quite the opposite.
Yeah.
So, at number 3, Bitten, tricked by the cover.
Sometimes the saving grace on these streaming platforms is, when you like arrow over it, it will start playing a little bit of the film.
Right.
Sometimes that'll save you, but
fucking freebie.
My number 2 is from a direct-to-video trilogy. It's the Slaughtered Vomit Dolls.
What? Where the fuck are you finding these things?
Jesus. It's written and directed by someone named Lucifer Valentine, whose browser history I can only assume is a waking nightmare. The movie is about a bulimic stripper turned prostitute, and the other titles in this trilogy are Regurgitated Sacrifice and Slow Torture Puke Chamber. This is my number 2 because I'm pretty sure these aren't trauma style, so bad it's good movies. I think they're graphic, hardcore, disturbing exploitation films. The kind of thing that you can probably only find being sold like out of a shoebox at some backwater flea market, like right next to bootleg Insane Clown Posse concert videos shot on a camcorder, or like Confederate flag bandanas, or that one glass display case that has a disturbing number of pocket knives in it. You know the kind of flea markets I'm talking about. That's where you can buy slaughtered vomit dolls.
I had always wanted to be a ballerina when I grew up. Instead, I became a stripper.
Good God.
If you need any more convincing that these things are subhuman trash, look no further than the 4th installment, Vomit Gore 4, Black Mass of the Nazi Sex Wizard.
Holy wow.
Who is that for? What is wrong with them? The world is just a little bit more horrible because Slaughtered Vomit Dolls exists. That is my number 2.
I think that most of the White House cabinet would be into that.
Absolutely. Right? They are a bunch of slaughtered vomit dolls.
There you go. My number 2 is actually kind of related to yours in some ways. I mean, mine's like
sex wizard.
It's the fun side of things. It could have probably landed as number 1 on my list of direct-to-video titles if I had followed the way that you did it and just listed titles, but had not actually seen any of the movies. But somehow I did see Caress of the Vampire 2.
Oh,
Teenage Ghoul Girl A Go-Go.
I definitely have seen this.
No, is it because of me? Did I show you this?
It's because of Caress of the Vampire.
Oh, yes, right, because they were together, right?
Well, I mean, if you love Caress of the Vampire the way that I do, you're going to seek out the rest of them.
Well, they were packaged together, and what a joke it was to pull on anyone that was interested in what Caress of the Vampire had to offer, because, of course, Caress of the Vampire was a lesbian vampire movie with women that were well endowed.
It sure was.
Removing whatever they had on and feigning lovemaking with one another. If you were expecting anything like Caress of the Vampire, you were probably upset by this shot-on-video mess from New Jersey's EI Independent Cinema. Director Bill Hellfire has done some fucking sketchy as fuck, quote, movie work over the years, with several of his flicks giving 100% adult store backroom vibes. But I would argue this 1996 improvisational experiment is less trashy and a little more funny than most anything else in his oeuvre. There's no real story, not really. And while it was packaged with its lesbian vampire lead-in, there are no lesbians, and there sort of really aren't that much in the way of vampires, truthfully. What you do get is a lot of drunk kids fucking around with their like dad's video camera. And one of them is Hellfire himself, who delivers a line with such gusto that today, some 25 odd years after seeing this movie, I still say it.
Good goddamn, this place is phenomenal.
It's awful stuff because really that line is all that's good about watching this otherwise pointless video essay on how to like coax your female friends into doffing their kit for you for your quote movie production.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. Heidi Honeycutt, wherever you are, I hope it's a better place than in Hellfire's bedroom with a VHS-C camcorder pointed at you while you awkwardly take off your shirt.
Oh, that sounds so awful.
It's the kind of thing that you would buy at your flea market.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I was in the middle of Pennsylvania this summer and I stumbled across one of these flea markets. There was a guy selling stuff out of the back of a Ford Aerostar that was covered in those like wolf blankets, you know,
yes.
like with like the full moon and the wolf.
Yep.
And he had a series of neck tattoos. He had a girlfriend that was like bizarrely goth for the middle of Pennsylvania. And that is absolutely where you would have bought a copy of that movie for sure.
Perfect.
My number one on this list might be the movie I have thought the most about out of everything we've ever talked about on this show.
Wow.
I have been sort of obsessing over the existence of this movie for days. It is about as far psychologically as you can get from Slaughtered Vomit Dolls. So you're welcome. I also want you to know that it took every ounce of self-control to put this on my bottom 5 list and not assign it to you as a full episode. But I honest to God think it might have made you quit the show and murdered me, and probably not in that order. My number one is Chuck E. Cheese in the Galaxy 5000.
Huh.
This was a 1999 direct-to-video film that was based on Chuck E. Cheese's, the children's birthday party venue known for its pizza and horrifying animatronics. This film was released in October 5th of 1999 in Chuck E. Cheese restaurants and Toys R Us, and that's it.
Wow.
Nowhere else.
Cool.
The plot is that a boy named Charlie Rocket needs $50,000 to fix his aunt and uncle's tractor engine. So Charles Entertainment Cheese and his friends go to the Galaxy 5000 to win it in a race. And now it's not animated. It's people wearing like the mascot costumes.
Wow.
With voiceovers. Jay, setting aside the fact that there is probably no bottom of the barrel distribution deeper than a Chuck E. Cheese exclusive release, I have questions. I have so many questions. If Chuck E. Cheese has the technology to travel to the Galaxy 5000, doesn't he also have the technology to just fix the fucking tractor?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Right? What's with the intergalactic prize money from this race? And while I'm thinking about it, why is the Galaxy 5000 operating its galactic financial system on the US dollar? What in the fucking wide world of Bitcoin is the exchange rate between America and the Galaxy 5000?
The Galaxy $5,000 is very weak from what I hear.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Lastly, and let me just say this. There is no movie that I currently want a physical copy of more than Chuck E. Cheese and the Galaxy 5000. I want, more than anything else, to get together with your two sisters and have a pajama party sleepover where we watch Chuck E. Cheese in the Galaxy 5000. Your sister Amber makes some crazy delicious next level chef pizza.
Sure.
Crystal is responsible for like costumes and goodie bags.
Yes.
We all end up getting married in the Galaxy 5000 themed wedding. It's the best idea I've ever had.
Yes.
I'm not sure whether or not you're invited.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I'm not there, so that makes sense.
I don't know, but I want this more than I want anything.
Pasquale, do you have any ideas on how we can come up with $50,000 for Charlie's aunt and uncle?
I'm glad you asked that question, Chucky. In a few days, a big races are going to take place. Look.
The Galaxy 5000 is an interplanetary race on the planet Orion. The race loops through the Crystal Canyons region, ending back at the Mach 7 gateway where the race begins.
Ooh, wow!
Racers from many planets will pit their skills and courage in the hopes of winning the grand prize, along with pride for their planetary home.
The grand prize for first place is a 30 kilar, which amounted to about $52,000 US dollars.
Wow!
We're now at my number one. Again, I've seen all of these films, so sooner or later you knew that I was going to have to dive deep into some kind of erotic, quote, thriller or another. But this 1990 film from director Laura Keats, her only feature film effort, is a real softcore gem called Crystal Force. Let's see what I did there.
Boy.
Gem.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Incompetently made, filled with abhorrent acting, and with almost all of the female cast inexplicably dressed in the same navy blue color.
Oh.
Just thank God for the nudity, because that's about the only thing that makes this 90-minute patience tester even remotely bearable. If I recall correctly, the story involves some kind of bizarre crystal centerpiece that's given to a family by a creepy antique store owner that somehow leads to death, possession, and demon sex.
Okay.
No, I mean it. Sex with actual rubber-suited demons. Like at one point, they start out and it's like the demon guy in the suit and he's kind of grabbing boob and doing whatever. And then he literally flips her over, grabs her by the hips. Holy shit.
I love how much of the time you're just like innocently watching a movie and then you're like, oh, I'm watching pornography. Oh no, I did it again.
But it wasn't. This was made as a quote horror film with absolutely no skill for horror.
Sure.
I think you need to see this to believe it. And if you were to watch it, I recommend beer, pizza, and a group of friends who aren't overly embarrassed by atrocious filmmaking, absurd special effects, a missing plot,
demon humping.
And yeah, you know, copious scenes of demon humping, right? Like, what good are your friends if they can't sit down and watch Crystal Force with you?
I'll tell you that we might have just come up with the ultimate dueling double bill right there. Look no further than Crystal Force and Chuck E. Cheese in the Galaxy 5000.
We don't even need to play it on this episode. We just did it.
We just did it.
Fantastic.
We just did it. You know what? I'm actually comfortable with that. I am 100%.
I am 100% okay with it. We don't even need to play the game. Let's just say it right away. We're both going to take one, and there it is.
Well, Jay, we just decided right now to forego Dueling Double Bill because we nailed it so hard in the last segment.
With our number ones.
That's right. Crystal Force and Chuck E. Cheese in the Galaxy 5000. Run, don't walk to that Dueling Double Bill. I'm not kidding. Like,
I'm not kidding
I want to
either.
come to your house. I want your sisters there. Pizza, and that's the doubleheader that we're watching. That's got to happen. The only way we allow it is if we get your sister Crystal a shirt that says Crystal Force for the weekend.
Yes.
Okay, this is really coming together. Well, what I want to talk about is something that I'm just going to throw out there at you. We haven't really talked much about this, but I want to put it out for the listeners. Last season, we did an episode where we took a look back at the original run of the show. As many of our listeners know, I had had a previous co-host. We made a bunch of episodes. There's a lot of films that we did in the original run of the show that are sort of canon in bad movie podcasts, things that you and I never got to talk about. And so what we did last year was we put a poll out with a couple of these titles for our listeners to pick an episode for you.
Yeah.
You ended up having to choose between Battlefield Earth and The Room. You ended up watching The Room. I'd like to do that again. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a poll up on the website for the listeners to go to and vote for which film you're going to watch for an upcoming episode later this year.
You got it.
And here are the two choices from previous episodes. Our listeners can pick whether or not Jason has to watch Street Fighter with Jean-Claude Van Damme or the Garbage Pail Kids movie.
Oh, man.
One of the two. Street Fighter or the Garbage Pail Kids
tough.
movie.
Now, that's interesting because now we've got a dueling double bill, truthfully. Right?
Right.
Because now you've got those two movies and we have our two number ones. Holy shit. We still walk out with two dueling double bills. We still get it.
We did it.
Man.
So I want everybody to visit filmjitsu.com or find us on the socials. We'll put this link up all over the place for the poll. Go over to the poll, vote, and let us know which one of these two titles you want Jay to have to watch in a future episode. But that's not now. What is now is the part of the show where you have to tell me what the payback is for the Crow Wicked Pissa or whatever it was.
Yeah. Mike, I think it's time for us to break our bias toward movies made in the past 30 or so years. And instead, I think we're going to delve back into the past to movies from, I don't know, the 1960s, in which men are men, and women are women, and gonks, well, they go beat. And if you think I have any idea what a gonk is or why it goes beat, well, you're severely overestimating just how much I know about Gonks Go Beat.
What the hell is a gonk?
Gonks Go Beat is a 1965 British film that's not exactly sci-fi, even though it's set far in the Earth's future, and not exactly a musical, even though it's filled with literally legendary musicians, such as, and I shit you not, two of the three members of Cream, Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce. But what the fuck is this even? Well, Mike, it's Gonks Go Beat, a flick that British film historian IQ Hunter included on his list of contenders for the worst British film ever made.
Stop saying Gonks Go Beat.
Shock Cinema magazine summed it up as Yellow Submarine meets the Brady Bunch Variety Hour.
Oh, no.
And because this is one very, very mod, very British movie, chock full of British talent, we're going to be counting down our bottom 5 British characters in movies.
Ooh, okay. I like that. That's fun.
Mike, where do gonks go?
What?
They go beat.
Oh, no. Is this an animated thing?
It's something.
Okay. Oh man. Like, how do you break the spell of the Crow Wicked Prayer? I guess Gonks Go Beat. Holy shit. This seems like a tattoo somebody ought to get. Just like, what the hell does it say on your arm? Oh, yeah, Gonks Go Beat. That's, oh man. All right. Well, I'm really looking forward to the bottom 5 British characters. I don't know how I feel about Gonks Go Beat.
But we're going to hear all about it in our next episode.
I hope our listeners will come back and join us next time when apparently Gonks Go Beat. And we'll talk about our bottom 5 British characters. But until such a time, we have been your hosts. I am Mike.
And I am Jay.
And we'll see you next time.
Mislim na te, hoću znat sve kate, vježbat ću sate i sate. Karate, vježbat ću dok zadnji mi kjaj zostane izađe.
And yeah, you know, copious scenes of demon humping, right? Like,
hey Siri, call all my friends that are into demon humping.
No, seriously, if you could watch this kind of shit with your friends,
you'll need to unlock your iPhone first.
Well, that stays.
That's hilarious. Oh my God.